Before I even begin, I need you all to consider the lies that you tell, and what you would do to keep them from being found out. Now, consider the lies of your neighbors. Not all lies are told by way of mouth. Some, if not most, are done by way of action. Take a lawn as an example. I don't give a fuck about my lawn. I don't care how it looks, how it reflects on me, or even if it's still alive. I only keep it short because it's a clause in my lease. But my neighbor, his bright green, perfectly trim and healthy lawn tells everyone around him, "Hey, I'm a normal American. My family is normal. I am doing well." No matter what is really happening in that man's life, no matter the constant fighting with him and his wife, or the crying of his boy, that goddamn lawn is going to be perfect. He'll smile at you as he trims it, and when you ask him about his day, he'll tell you that he's living the dream. I'm not saying that I condone what happened. I absolutely condemn it. But I am telling you that I understand. I don't know what that says about me. This is exactly why you shouldn't live in the suburbs. Honestly, my interactions with my neighbor were pretty minimal when I first moved in. His wife was pretty and his son healthy. That's all I could really tell you about them until summer came. They blended into the cul-de-sac as easily as quirky lawn gnomes. If I knew nothing else about them, I'd tell you that they belonged there, that they were the perfect family unit. The 1950s would probably tell them to tone it down a little. But there were cracks in the facade. The boy was only well-mannered when his father was around. He would be a rambunctious anarchist running up and down the cul-de-sac while his father was at work. More than once I had to tell him to get the hell out of the road so I could get to work on time. But there were days that the kid would look at nothing except the ground. His mother stayed at home, again, they were old-fashioned, and if there wasn't a drink in her hand and a flirtatious wink on her face, then there was a shiner and a broom. The father, let's call him Cal, he drank pretty heavily himself. More than once he would come knocking at my door early in the morning asking to borrow a tool of some sort with whiskey on his breath. Look, I'm not going to judge. I haven't bought a six-pack that didn't fully disappear by morning in, well, ever. But unlike Cal, I'm not a mean drunk. The tools he asked for were never consistent. Sometimes he would ask for a shovel, other times he would ask for a Y-cutter, and if I didn't have what he needed, he'd call me a fairy and stomp back home. He'd apologize with a laugh the next day as he mowed his lawn. Those days were when his kid stayed inside. Those days were the ones that his wife held a broom. I cannot stress enough how much this neighborhood looked like a Watchtower pamphlet. Kids were always on their bikes, and the sidewalks held honest-to-God lemonade stands, crooked E and all. I don't think that their boy actually wanted to run a lemonade stand himself. Throwing rocks at squirrels and peeing on things was more his thing. But just like that goddamn lawn, a lemonade stand was a symbol of all's clear here. Cal came over in the morning, his breath wild with the sting of bourbon, asking for a hammer.
"Mine's busted,"
he said. He said that about all of his tools. He and I both knew he didn't own a single tool in his house. He and I both knew that his job barely paid for his car. We both rented our house from the same company. But these lies? Well, they were never meant for me. By early afternoon, Cal built a lemonade stand straight out of a Peanuts comic strip. So began the arms race. Cal sat his boy right in front of it and told the kid to stop fucking squirming. Cal's wife came right out of the house with a plastic pitcher of lemonade concentrate halfway filled with ice cubes from her fridge. In less than an hour, in the blistering heat, the family from across the street erected their own stand. Their pitcher was glass, their lemons freshly squeezed. They even made a show of chipping off a piece of ice with an ice pick from a giant block to be put into each cup with silver tongs. I fucking hate this town. Cal's kid fidgeted. He squirmed. There were no customers at either stand. He picked his nose and Cal yelled at him. In no time, it escalated. The kid cried. Cal told him to be a man. The kid cried louder, and Cal made a show of pointing out his belt buckle. The kid pushed the stand over. What happened next? I don't know. Cal dragged him inside, and by dusk, a cop car sat near his perfect fucking lawn. The cops didn't stay for very long. They never do in these parts. The moment they left, the shouting began.
We need to medicate the fucker.
I heard Cal shouting.
He's got ADD or some shit.
I couldn't make out what his wife had said, save for no money. The next day, Cal was right at my door, asking if I had an ice pick. By then, I was super tired of this suburb drama, this dumb one-upmanship. I handed it to him, told him to keep it. No more tool borrowing. I just didn't want to have to deal with him again. God forgive me. The rest of the summer was quiet. I need to impress how odd that was on you. Before that lemonade stand, this kid was running around like a wasteland raider desperate for meat. Afterwards, I could hear finches. I didn't even know that there were finches in my neighborhood. It was still, and I dreaded every minute of it. I didn't see that kid again until school started. As the school bus came to a stop at the corner, it looked like this kid's soul had been sucked out. His eyes looked vacant, almost glossed over. His movements were nearly mechanical, as if there was a delay between a puppet master and a marionette. I never heard him scream again. The only word he seemed to know now was, okay. If Cal's wife was drinking before, she was merely dipping her toe in compared to how often she drank once her son went vacant. First, she was openly drinking a glass of wine out on the lawn when Cal was gone. She would shift her weight back and forth as she stood, swirling the glass. She would alternate between a wry smirk to absolute hopelessness. She would finish her glass, and her kid would come home, zombie-like. She'd then get inside herself, likely wary of Cal. But then, the glass became a bottle. She would no longer wait for her son to come home, and would drive off to unknown pastures. God knows if the kid even noticed. I don't think he noticed much of anything anymore. I only hoped that whatever she was doing, she got home before Cal did. That, and the bastard never came home early to see his wife out in front, breaking the facade. The lies we tell. My fears were founded. One night, I heard them yelling. There was crying. No cops this time, though. One fall evening, just about a week ago, there was a knock on my door. I swung my front door open with some force, ready to tell Cal off, remind him that he wasn't supposed to be bothering me. Instead was the sweet and pretty face of his wife. Eyes labored from wine. One with a new shiner. "Can I come in?" she said with a hint of urgency. "I need to tell someone." I let her in and fought back my good hosting instincts to ask her if she wanted something to drink. It was clear that she had plenty already. Speaking pleasantries with her was, well, anything but. "Are you okay?" I asked her. "What happened?" She asked me to lock the door and turned away from me. I did, and walked over to her to see that mascara had bled, her eyes raw. "Do you know about Dr. Friedman?" she asked. Question seemed completely out of the blue. I blinked in response. She shook her head. "Do you know what a transorbital lobotomy is?" she asked, her words slurred. I shook my head. I only recognized the word lobotomy. It used to be thought of as a cure-all, she said. Dr. Friedman would pull up in suburbs just like this in his van and perform them. Headaches? Lobotomy. Sleep issues? Lobotomy. Misbehaving children? She was pacing back and forth with manic furor. I reached for my phone. No reason Cal shouldn't be visited by the cops tonight. They would push a pick up your nose or behind your eyes and scramble your brains. Scramble your problems away. She was crying now. I stood like an idiot. Just then, my windows brightened with the headlights of a parking car. She rushed over to my blinds before I even had a chance to peek behind them. Shit, she whispered. Shit, Cal's home. You can stay here, I said. I'll call the cops, you'll be safe. She rushed to my back door and pulled it open. Melissa! I yelled, trying to stop her, but she was already in my backyard. Forget I was here, she said. I'm sorry I bothered you. He's a good guy, he means well. She climbed my fence and hopped over to her property. He's just passionate sometimes. Then she disappeared into her own home. It goes without saying that I immediately called the cops. Cal? He is definitely the kind of man that would own a gun before a toolbox. I waited inside of my house in desperate silence, hoping for the cops to show any minute. Funny thing about people calling the police on you too many times. Eventually, they just stop showing up. Sleep was a faraway relative that I had forgotten. Melissa and Cal's home stayed silent. Honestly, the stillness of it all worried me more than their usual yelling. So when I heard footsteps going to and from their driveway, I immediately took notice. Cal was walking frantically from his house and then to his car, suitcases in each hand. His wife and his kid sat silently in the car. The light of the early morning was just bright enough that I could see their faces. The boy looked as vacant and far away as he had for some time. If his eyes were focused on anything, I doubt it mattered. A long, single stream of dried blood ran from one of Melissa's nostrils, her eyes exactly like her son's.
Time to go.
That bastard, Cal said. Melissa continued to look at nothing, her face slack and doll-like. Okay, she said. And just like that, they drove away. Their lawn is overgrown now, drying and brown in random spots. No one there to maintain the lie. No one ever came home.